On screen currently are the ADV viability rankings as of the last update about 6 months ago. There I am. You got Tyranitar as the near universal #1 best Pokemon to use in ADV. And then with a rank of 13th, an average rank of 13.3, you have Claydol. And you can see all the voters pretty much the exact same range. And if I go back a couple updates ago, you can see Claydol even higher at 12th, a whole spot further ahead. But it was not always like this. If I go back to the update from October 2018, you can see Claydol all the way down here at 20th, with a low ranking by Cowboy Dan of 30th. So that's a jump of a good 7-8 spots, which may not seem like a big difference, but I assure you is a massive difference, especially in this kind of range. So how did we get here? Well, for a long time in ADV, Claydol was largely limited to fairly specific defensive team structures. Either the infamous so-called Magdoll structures, Magneton traps Skarmory and then Claydol spins and you no longer have to worry about spikes. Or teams like the one you're seeing here from Fakes, where Claydol is used in an attempt to just win a much more long-term Spike Spore. And that's really, for the most part, all Claydol was seen as was as a spin bot and not a whole lot more. Sure, it checks Tyranitar reasonably well, which helps, but mostly it was just that rapid spin was a necessity to help back up the bulky waters and Blissies on these teams. And the options for spinners in ADV are very limited. Claydol has Stab Psychic to threaten the main spin blocker in Gengar, and it even has Refresh to shrug off Toxic from Skarmory, so it's the most logical choice on these teams. Drill Peck on Skarm was also much less common back then, so Claydol really had no issues coming in repeatedly on Skarmory. Plus, it could be supported with Wish from Blissey throughout the game. And Claydol still functions well on these teams. This replay is actually from less than a year ago. But you really weren't seeing Claydol splashed onto tons of different teams and team types. Around 2019 or 2020, users like especially Altina comes to mind. He really started to use Claydol on teams that didn't actually have spikes of their own. And instead of looking to win these long-term spike scores over a long game, they just wanted Claydol as more of a one-time stopgap. The idea is basically that Pokemon like Metagross, Suicune, Snorlax, Celebi, Heracross, these are all very strong offensive Pokemon, but they also all invite Skarmory in for lots of spiking and roar opportunities, and that's, not really acceptable to invite Skarmory in that much. If Skarmory is able to get 3 layers up against you and you don't have a spinner, that's going to make the game much, much harder. But if you include Claydol alongside these Pokemon, you kind of care a lot less about Skarmory coming in, because you're constantly breaking it and Claydol can just spin later. That's the basic idea. And these Pokemon all have excellent synergy together. They all contribute to breaking Skarm for each other. Sleep Talk Suicune especially threatens Skarmory, so that it just can't come in safely when it's asleep to roar it out. Suicune covers the fire types and mixed attackers that Metagross and Celebi can't handle. Celebi and Snorlax handle the special attacks that Metagross and Suicune don't want to take. Metagross and Claydol handle the physical attackers that the others don't want to. You know, you get it, and so on. Crucially, Claydol also serves as an electric pivot, so Snorlax doesn't get overwhelmed too quickly. You know, that's kind of a common criticism of Snorlax, is that it can't keep coming in over and over. Claydol synergizes excellently with Snorlax and really helps. You know, it keeps spikes off the field for it, and it can help with electric types. And even in spikeless matchups, people realize that Claydol can serve as a very good one-time check to basically everything in the tier. You know, nothing is really threatening to OHKO Claydol. You can even EV to live a Hydro Pump from offensive Starmie from full health, you know. Explosion was also no longer ever dropped from Claydol. It always carried it. You know, no refresh anymore. Its bulk and the threat of a strong explosion is what makes it work in being a half-checked everything. So it's a Pokemon that serves as sort of a half-check to everything, and it can get a strong boom off, and it's still functional as a spinner. People really started to value Claydol a lot more, and seeing it as much more splashable than it had been viewed previously. Users like ABR and especially Jirachi really come to mind, where they would be using Claydol everywhere. Like, go back and watch SPL in 2022 and Kalos Invitational 6. That was probably the absolute peak of Claydol. Misdreavus even cropped up as a direct response to the amount of Claydol that was being used. Misdreavus was previously pretty much unused in ADV, but it could completely shut down Claydol, and suddenly there was a lot more value in that. And then Claydol started running Shadow Ball in response to turn that matchup around, but also it was a response to itself. You know, Shadow Ball makes it so Claydol has a move to hit opposing Claydol. Generally, Psychic is still a lot more common today because obviously if you get burned, Shadow Ball isn't so good anymore. And since Claydol is trying to spin versus Gengar a lot, it gets burned pretty often. Personally, for that reason, I pretty much limit Shadow Ball to the more defensive type structures within aromatherapy users. But yeah, these types of Skarmory beatdown Claydol offenses are some of my absolute favorite teams to use. Metagross, Suicune, Snorlax, and Claydol together are 4 Pokemon that essentially cover absolutely everything in the tier. So there's some freedom in what you can use alongside them. The special check doesn't have to be Snorlax, though that's probably the easiest one. Celebi and even Regice totally work. Or can work. Blissey works too, but I think you want a more aggressive Bliss set, like Sing. The one thing for partners, I'd say, is you don't want to end up flailing against Skarm Bliss, so to speak. Ideally, you don't want to put too much pressure on your Claydol. You should only be relying on it to spin ideally once or at most twice in a game. I love Charizard on these teams for that reason, because, you know, it's basically the best Skarm Bliss Punisher there is without, you know, needing spikes. It's also a pretty good idea to have a good check to fighting types. Fighting types would be kind of the one obvious thing that the Metagross, Suicune, Snorlax, Claydol core is weak to. Tyranitar, of course, is always good. You know, Sand will help the damage from your breakers stick. And the Tar can kind of be customized to fit what your team needs. Fighting types of your own also totally can fit. Heracross, Medicham, Breloom, even Machamp, those definitely can all work. I'm also a big fan of Fast Claydol, which functions as kind of a secondary Suicune check for these more offensive teams, because you know, it can get the jump on Suicune and explode on it. Obviously, if you're opting for lots of speed on Claydol, you're not taking hits as well, so of course that's something to keep in mind. I think that pretty much covers all the basics. I love Claydol Offense, and so should you. Thanks for watching.